at hand. He said, and you need to flee. But go ahead. And this is like twofold parts of it, but go ahead.
For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, unto them that give suck in those days. For there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people.
Okay, so it said this is so all things are written that will be fulfilled. Okay? And we read about what was to happen in Daniel. What was to happen? It says, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with the flood, and unto the end of the world desolations are determined. The Lord said in the 19th chapter, he's going to lay you even with the ground. And what's going to happen to Israel as a people? Verse 24.
And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles.
How long?
Until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled.
So you're going into captivity. And it's going to be that way until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So he said that, and then he died. He said that, and then he died in the midst of that week. Let's go to see, but before we get to that, let's go to see the siege. Reference 5. Because that 1 week, he was cut off in the midst of that week, leaving 3.5 years just there. That still has not been fulfilled, even until this point. This is where we're at right now, just to point this out. 486.5 years fulfilled. Go from the time he was anointed up until the time he died. He fulfilled that 3.5 years, and he was cut off in the midst of that week. And you got 486.5 years fulfilled, 3.5 years still remain. But he said, I just want to point that out so we're clear on that. But he says, you are going into captivity. Jerusalem going to be trodden down because we're in the restoration. He said, hey, look, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. IsraelTeach is not going to sign you a decree for this one. Not this time. Let's see what Titus did. And find out why the Messiah looked at Jerusalem and wept. This is the siege of Jerusalem, 66 through 70 AD. This is from Encyclopedia Americana, a popular dictionary of art, sciences, literature, history, politics, and biography, 1836, the year, or volume 12, 1836, on page 281. When you're ready, go ahead.
He, Titus, took Jerusalem, AD 70, after a siege during which it had been the scene of the most shocking suffering and cruelty. The temple was destroyed in spite of his exertions to save it. In some respects, Titus displayed much humanity.
Right.
But it is impossible to justify the crucifixion by his orders of hundreds of captives.
The only time he showed humanity was to get the people to yield to what he wanted them to do. If he thought it would cause them to surrender, he would show humanity. But if he needed cruelty, he was surely display it, as it says here, all of the hundreds of captives that he crucified. Go ahead.
After paying a visit to Egypt, he returned to Rome, which he entered in triumph, and was associated by his father in the government of the empire. So
him proving himself allowed him some power, and then he became emperor. But let's go down to the next one and see some descriptions of what was going on and understand why Jesus could look out at Jerusalem and weep. This is from Ancient Siege Warfare, page 342. Go ahead.
Josephus said the Roman soldiers at Jerusalem amused themselves by crucifying their victims in a variety of positions.
And it starts off with Josephus, and the reason I want to point this out, every time I look at Josephus, any reference, I put an asterisk next to it. Because they say he was an Israelite, which I have my doubts of that. And if he was a traitor. But it says Josephus said, I seriously doubt if he was, but Josephus said the Roman soldiers at Jerusalem amused themselves by crucifying their victims in a variety of positions. And I want to point this out also, most of the references that we read pertaining to this time come from the writings of Josephus Flavius. Just so you know that. They may not, you may read something during a lesson, the lessons you listen to. Oftentimes the references that they're referring to, historians use, they go back to Josephus. So it said they amuse themselves by crucifying their victims in a variety of positions, likened them to the lynchings in the modern era, where they amuse themselves with cutting off ears and limbs and castrations. Same thing. Same type thing, different thing. Same thing. Keep reading.
The crucifixions continued at a rate of 500 a day. So there was scarcely any space left for fresh crucifixions, and the Romans had trouble keeping up with the supply of crosses.
Do you know how many crucifixions there are when you're running out of wood? That's a lot of crucifixions. That's the consequence for sin. There is no peace with sin, brothers and sisters. Don't expect it. Go ahead.
In this case, the crucifixions failed to bring about a surrender.
And that's what it was. Just as the lynching tree struck fear in sharecroppers to stay in their place, to not even strive to reach up that social ladder, crucifixions were used to strike fear in the people so that they would surrender during the siege. Because eventually something has to give. Either the will and the starvation and the killing of people is going to cause them to surrender, or the army simply depleted and going to have to come off of that siege and retreat. You can only siege for so long, but you can only last without food for so long too. Keep reading.
But we do have successful example of this method. In the mop-up operations in Palestine after the fall of Jerusalem, the Romans besieged the fortress of Martyrs. This fortress sat atop a rocky province, a naturally strong position that made it virtually impenetrable. The Romans, however, in the course of their siege operations, were lucky enough to capture a young Jew from a prominent family who had distinguished himself greatly in the sallies against the Roman earthworks.
And what did they do to this man?
The Romans brought this young man before the fortress and tortured him in sight of the Jews on the wall. That caused consternation among the Jews, and when the Romans brought a cross forward as though they were going to crucify their prisoner, the Jews surrendered. The difference was that Titus' victims were from the lower classes, while this prisoner was from a family of great influence.
Prior to that, he had been killing prisoners. He had been killing prisoners. We read about that in the first reference. He said, but this one was somebody of a different status, as if his life meant more than somebody else's life. That's the foolishness of man's thinking. But it worked in this instance, and they surrendered. But keep reading.
In another effort to horrify the Jews into surrendering, Titus cut off the hands of several prisoners and sent them back to Jerusalem to plead with the leaders to save the city by giving it up to the Romans.
You see what you allow to take place when you sin against God? You see what you give yourself over to when you turn from your Creator? When you turn from your deliverer? That's the type of thing that happens, brothers and sisters. And that's what that has been our experience. Let's go to Daniel. We're almost done. Daniel, the 9th chapter, and 27th verse. Okay? Because it said he was going to do something with this covenant. A lot of things are being done in the 70 weeks. When you're ready, you go ahead.
And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate.
Okay, so he's going to confirm the covenant that was made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and passed to Israel. And he says then he's going to be cut off, and then he's going to fulfill it all. Let's go to Romans. He's going to fulfill it all, brothers and sisters. Let's go to Romans, because he confirmed or strengthened that covenant. It was Jesus that did that. This is Romans, the 15th chapter and the 8th verse. When you're there, go ahead.
Now I say that Jesus Christ was the minister of the circumcision for the truth of God.
To do what?
To confirm the promises made unto the Father.
To strengthen that covenant. To confirm the covenant that was made. Galatians, the 3rd chapter. This is Jesus that did this. Paul goes into it. Galatians, the 3rd chapter and the 15th verse. And when you're there, go ahead.
Brethren, I speak after the manner of men, though it be but a man's covenant. Yet if it be confirmed, no man disannul it or added thereto.
So he said, I speak after the manner of men, though it be but a man's covenant. It was made with a flesh and blood man, Abraham. He said, yet if it be confirmed, and that's what Jesus did, he confirmed it. Yet it be confirmed, no man disannul it, or make it void, or add it thereto. The same covenant. Go ahead.
Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made.
He said, now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. Go ahead.
He said, not unto seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed which is Christ. So
with him saying that, I'm going to make a nation out of you, and through your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, he's talking about that seed to come. He was telling him that the Messiah was going to come through you, through your loins. He said, now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He said, not and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to that seed which is Christ. Verse 17.
And this I say, that the covenant that was confirmed before God in Christ, the law which was 430 years after, cannot disannul, that it should make the promise of none effect.
Right. And we should understand also that faith was precedent before the official giving of the law. He's not doing anything away with adding a law, because Abraham understood the law. It said he kept his laws, statutes, and commandments. He understood what it meant to be holy. They understood before it was even officially given. But what did they do? What did he do? He was the father of faith. He stepped out on faith. He had faith even before it became popular. Because people talk today like they have so much faith. So it says, in this I say that the covenant that was confirmed before of God in Christ, the law which was 430 years after, cannot disannul, that it should make the promise of none effect. It was strengthened through Jesus. The covenant was. But we still have 3.5 years remaining before the restoration of Israel. We still waiting on that. Let's go to Matthew. Did you read? You finish reading?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to Matthew, the 24th chapter. Matthew, the 24th chapter. And find out when this is going to take place. When is Israel going to be restored? That was the initial question of Daniel. I started off by asking, how long, Lord, how long? Let's find out. Matthew, the 24th chapter and the 29th verse. Find out when this lamb will come back as a lion. This one who was crucified and resurrected will come back and establish his kingdom. Let's find out. The deliverer of Israel, let's find out when he's coming back. Verse 29.
Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be dark, and the moon shall not give out light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And there shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory.
So it said immediately after the tribulation of those days, you're going to see that sign of Christ, where the sun is darkened and the moon shall not give a light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. The sky's going to roll back like a scroll, and you're going to see God. And it says, and the earth's going to mourn, because they're going to understand at that point that God is real and they don't know him. Verse 31.
And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other.
His elect is Israel. Let's go to Isaiah 27th chapter. He's going to gather his elect. This was prophesied of. And he's going to do something with them once he has it. Because we still have 3.5 years remaining before the restoration of Israel. Isaiah 27th chapter and the 11th verse. When you're there, go ahead.
When the bows thereof are withered, they shall be broken off. The women come and set them on fire. For it is a people of no understanding. Therefore, he that made them will not have mercy on them, and he that formed them will show them no favor.
What's going to come to pass?
And it shall come to